All right. Well, again, good afternoon, everyone, and happy Monday. I will apologize in advance. Who in the world puts a webinar on a Monday afternoon? You know, the golden rule is don't do meetings on Mondays or Fridays. But thought Monday would be a good day to get this, especially as we're rolling into some very important dates coming up as it comes to some of the activities going on at the federal level. With that, well, first of all, my name is Jeff Hutchison. I am the Director of Public Affairs at TESOL International Association. Very pleased to be with everyone this afternoon. It has been a few months since I've had the opportunity to engage with everyone. We had a webinar that we did, I think it was January or February. At that time, we had AFT that was able to join us. And then for those of us that joined, for those of you that were able to join us in Salt Lake City at TESOL International Association's convention, we had several engagements there, and then it's been a couple of months since we've been there. So now time for an update, just kind of what's going on and where we are as it pertains to federal policy at the federal level impacting the English language teaching field. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my slides here. Yeah. I tell you what, I went away for a vacation for just a little bit, and I come back and I forgot how to operate Zoom, but I'll figure it out here as we go through. Here we go. Yes. All right. I believe that is showing for everyone now, so I believe and hope that you can see that title, and I also need to keep up with yeah, we got a couple of people still in the waiting room, so I'll keep up with that as we go through. Uh, all right. So we will hopefully spend the next, I would like to spend about the next 40 to 45 minutes giving you an overview and give some time for some Q&A and what you can do to take action where you are with everything going on at the federal level. Now, we may broach a little bit in terms of things happening at the state level, but the primary focus is going to be that which is happening at the federal level, and specifically on things that are impacting the English language teaching field. Now, I will just a reminder as far as meeting goes here. If you do have a question specific to any particular point, please hold that till the end. It might be a little bit easier because for those of you who know me, I might get off topic and we start talking about something else. And I want to make sure that we're able to get through all of the agenda here and then leave questions for the end. We are going to cover quite a lot. Matter of fact, just to give you a quick overview of what we intend to cover today. We'll just very briefly talk about the landscape of the English language teaching field, or I should say English language teaching profession. I think that's a better way to express that. Then we'll dig down into some of the actions, the appropriations, federal actions, things happening right now that pertain and impact the English language profession, English language teaching profession, as well as the students we serve at all levels, our communities and our schools. And then we'll look at some of the legislation out there, as well as ways in which you can take action for that. So again, my name is Jeff Hutchison, TESOL International Association Director of Public Affairs. So let's just jump right in. And I believe my apologies in the participants. There's one Watsashaw from Watsashaw, I believe, is up in Illinois, and she's been trying to get in and comes in and out. Hopefully, she'll be able to stick this time and be with us. So very briefly, if those of you are with me with us in Salt Lake City. A lot of times the question comes up about the role of the federal government in education in general. And pretty much there's four guiding principles when we look at um, what the federal government does for education. And they are constrained, of course. The federal government is constrained by the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, in that education is the purview of the states. However, that does not preclude or prohibit the federal government from involvement. Primarily, they ensure equity and access. You may have heard a lot of that, especially around English learners when it deals with or concerns civil rights, especially at pre-K through 12 public education and access. There's also a lot that they do, a lot the federal government does in terms of funding educational opportunity, especially for high need and at-risk students. English learners falls into that category as a high need and is expressed through Title III of the Every Student Succeeds Act or the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is English language acquisition. As well, the federal government serves as really technical assistance. They inform policy and practice through educational research and development, funding a lot of research. You may have, I think it was just Friday, it might have been Thursday, just recently, some of the grant funding that was cut off for the National Endowment for Humanities was, well, at least a court. I won't say it was reinstated. That's a misstatement on my part. It was ruled in court that that was unconstitutional in how that was taken away. We'll see how that falls out and see if there's be any reinstatement as they go forth. But if many of you, maybe if you had Institute for Educational Sciences research grants, Department of State grants, etc., may have been impacted by some of the reviews and rescissions and outright cancellations. I know, for example, the National Professional Development Program out of Title III of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. There were about 28 programs that focused on teacher pipelines for multilingual learners and bilingual educators were cut off at that time. And then lastly, they do foster educational improvement to build state and local capacity. So that's really in a kind of an umbrella view of what the role of federal government does. And when we narrow that down to specifically to the English language teaching profession, there's a lot of supplemental funding, especially pre-K through 12 for public education. We talk about Title IIA with support to effective education. We can look at Title III. Now I say Title IIA and Title III, both of the same act, again, I've referenced before, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. That provides funding either through grant competitions or direct to states, and states are then able to disperse that out to LEAs to support support, not supplant. I believe that is the phrase. Support the education, English language teachers, education of English learners, the development of teacher pipelines, etc. Also pre-K through 12, and not just pre-K through 12, but also in adult ed and higher ed for those that are seeking to continue their education, seeking perhaps endorsement or licensure, the gaining the credentials that they need to teach in whatever educational capacity. There are student loans. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the impact to that. And then, especially in elementary and secondary education, the civil rights of all learners is what the federal government is supportive of. You may remember, I just said supportive of, perhaps I was thinking of a prior administration. But you may recall in January of 2015, for those that are working in public education, the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education, in conjunction with the Department of Justice, issued guidance on civil rights supporting English learners and their families. That has since been rescinded and deprioritized under the current administration. I believe everyone on this is probably very familiar with that. If you're not, please bring it back up during the Q&A. We can go deeper into that. Adult ed, there's accountability measures, measurable skills gains that are set in place for states, but the primary function is going to be the funding that the federal government does to support adult education, adult literacy. For those of you who don't realize, this is really a huge area for English learners. Of about 60% of the participants in federally funded adult literacy, adult education programs are actually English learners. In addition to that, really a discrepancy when you get 60% of the participants are English learners, but you look at the stats and only about 10% of the instructors have any TESOL certification or any endorsement therein. They may have educational licensure through other means, but specifically TESOL, only 10% have that. So there's a great need. It's not just a funding need, but it's a great need within that community of supporting for professional learning. Higher ed, of course, a lot of teacher pipeline, global education and support, as well as research. So the federal government impacts all of these areas and more. You probably, we got such a great community right here in the audience today. You can probably think about five others just off the top of your head, not other ways in which the federal government supports the English language teaching field or profession, excuse me. But unfortunately, what we have seen in under this current administration is a shift. I think that's the nicest way to say it, a shift in that federal landscape into the support for the English language teaching profession. And much of that has to do around that first one, appropriations, the funding that is in play, not just funding that goes direct. A lot of people think of K through 12 and supporting English learners, but it's not just that area. It's also across in higher ed and other funding streams that the U.S. government, or at least the administration, is seeking to change some of the focus on that. We'll go deeper into each one of these. I just referenced a minute ago about the rescission of the guidance for civil rights. Talk a little bit about that in just a moment. A big one that has just changed. Matter of fact, it was just a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, that the final rule came out for federal student loan limits impacting education, specifically educators, changing definitions such that those are seeking, especially in the graduate level work in education, are no longer considered professional. And that impacts the amount of loans that people are able to draw down, impacts their ability to access, really access their education. We'll talk some about that and what has happened there. And then you've got some acronyms I threw out there. ED, which is just short for the U.S. Department of Education. And then I've got IAA and eliminations. Interagency agreements is what the IAA stands for. We'll talk briefly about that, but those of you that, if you haven't been living under a rock, you've known that I think it's about 7 or 9 IAAs that the Department of Ed has done, and such that they have farmed out much of their responsibilities under the auspice of different departments. One of the big ones specific to English language teaching has to do with the Office of English Language Acquisition, and that one, quite frankly, this week, after a 90-day notice goes into effect, is sought to be eliminated. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment as well. And then we get into educational access issues. And I'll just give a little caveat here. I'll probably bring it up again. We talk about Plyler v. Doe. We talk about educational access. And generally, that is a context of the undocumented and their access to education. The caveat is this: not every English learner is an immigrant, and not every immigrant is an undocumented immigrant, and not every immigrant as a whole is an English learner. You will see out, especially in the public narrative and rhetoric around the Supreme Court case of Plyler v. Doe. And my apologies, I should give a little context here. For those that do not know, Plyler v. Doe was the 1982 Supreme Court decision, a case out of Texas that opened up, or at least codified, judicially codified, that children and young adults have the right to public education regardless of their immigration status. And that was based upon the 1964 Civil Rights Act, as well as the 1974 Equal Educational Opportunity Act. So it was grounded in law. That case right now, and maybe I should save it for a little bit, I'll bring it back up. Case right now is being there are many ways in which it's being challenged, and we'll talk about some of the rhetoric around that and some of the advocacy that you could do in your own communities. But I just wanted to give that caveat that we fully understood that English learners, as we define them in all contexts, not just public education, pre-K through 12, but also in adult education and higher education, are not it should not be conflated in terms of immigration status. And that is one of the things that we see often out there in the public rhetoric, conflated there. So, okay. So let's dive a little deeper into both of these. So we'll talk about appropriations first, because that really is the big one, and how the federal government influences and either supports or changes priorities for education. When we look at it as a whole, at the pre-K through 12 level, federal funding as a whole, not just English language teaching, but as a whole, is around 10 to 12%. It varies each year on the overall funding. The bulk of the funding, around 80%, yeah, about, I'd say 88 to 90% of the funding comes from the state and local municipalities. That is where funding comes from for public education. But within that, and specific to English language teaching, are two really key ones. One is Title III of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and the other is Title II-A, Support Effective Instruction. That is also out of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And right now, well, this is not anything new under the sun, if you will. We have been dealing with these proposals for cuts and eliminations for the past few years, specifically on at the House level and now both the House and the executive level. Though those of you may recall last year, in which the president proposed eliminating Title III completely. And then, even after it was appropriated, after Congress appropriated those funds, chose to withhold them over the summer. You may remember there was about, I think it was $7 or $8 billion that were being withheld for about, I think it's seven, maybe 8 or 9 programs. Title III was one of them. And that sent a lot of states scurrying, because you have a context here in which this funding, 890 million, supports over 5 million English learners in the United States. And when we talk about English learners, we're not just talking about the learners themselves, but also the support around those. So many offices are Title III funded. You have educators, paraprofessionals, that their positions are funded through that. And when that withholding happened, you may recall there were a lot of concerned states, as well as concerned local education agencies, and still some today, are a little bit skittish about whether or not they can budget for these when there is not a certainty around the federal government being able to fund them. Unfortunately, the Title III funding proposed elimination is caught up in that rhetoric I was talking about before, as well as the executive order designating English as the official language. Because the Title III funding was administered through the Office of English Language Acquisition, which values, not just values, but also follows the research on supporting home language access, supporting bilingual, dual language education. The administration saw that as is not in step or in line with the executive order of English as the official language. Now, we as educators, researchers, as a profession, understand the value and the assets and focus on the home language of the learners we serve. There was also some, of course, this ties into to that last point about Plyler v. Doe, back to that public rhetoric that unfortunately some policymakers will tend to just default and say an English learner is an undocumented learner. Well, the stats don't support that. We're looking at stats vary, but well over 50%. Some go as high as 75% of English learners in public education are actually U.S. citizens. But the challenge there is that many of those, while they may be citizens themselves, they live in a mixed status household. So there is a residual impact when it comes to educational access. So pre-K through 12, two key things there. And the proposed cuts to Title II-A that support effective instruction, where a lot of professional learning and development comes from. That's almost a $2.2 billion funding stream from the federal government. This year, the president is proposing to eliminate that and roll it into, I believe, what was the acronym? MEGA, I believe, Make Education Great Again. I'll withhold commentary on that. But that $2.2 billion was going to be rolled in with other programs, and effectively it was going to be cut drastically. That mega bill did not have enough to cover all of the programs that were being rolled into it. So in effect, it was a cut to Title II-A, and in the sense that they're eliminating it suggests or outright saying no, we're zeroing this out and rolling it in, does qualify it as elimination. Adult ed. This one was new last year when there was a proposed elimination of Title II AFLA, Adult Education and Family Literacy Act. This Title II is under what's called the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or WIOA. So it's different than the pre-K through 12, which was under a different act. The administration just last year proposed eliminating the state grants, $715 million that went out to states that supported almost, I think it was 1.5, 1.6 million learners. And in that, again, over half of those were English learners. But the sad reality of it is that even that amount of money and that reach, if you looked at the total need, not just English learners, but all adults that need the literacy support, the educational foundation, educational support, it's a fraction. Some estimate anywhere from 4 to 5% of those that could actually use and benefit from this. And then when we talk about English learners, oftentimes English learners are those that need literacy in English. Not they already possess multiple literacies, and then they may be in the point of migrating here. They could be professionals in their home country, and they need access to the skills that will gain them the ability to access the professionalization that they need here in the States. And unlike pre-K through 12, adult ed is not protected by Plyler v. Doe. Adult ed program, and especially now under the current administration, is primarily for those that have the authority to be able to not just be here but engage in work, because a lot of the adult ed programs will lead to CTE, career technical education aspects, and that has been pronounced even more so in this current administration. And many states have moved to where access to adult ed programs, that the programs themselves are verifying eligibility. So you may or may not be from a state that is engaged in that, but many states have decided to do that. Higher ed, one of the big ones, especially when it comes to English language teaching, has been the cuts to the Teacher Quality Partnership Program, which sets up really grants that bring together LEAs with higher education institutions and other organizations supporting really the development of teacher pipelines. That has been proposed for cuts. And then if we take in all of that, that I keep seeing the word proposed. And I should have put proposed under the higher ed cuts to TQP, because this is the beauty of how our federal government works. Just because the president proposes something, proposes, maybe an increase or a cut or an elimination in the budget, that does not mean that is what Congress will approve. And to give an example from pre-K through 12, the past, I believe, past 4 years at least, not just for the administration, but in the House has actually moved to propose elimination of Title III. But in each case, the Senate has come through. We like to say Senate tends to be the adult in the room, and has not acquiesced to those proposed cuts and has continued to do what is called level funding. So Title III, I believe, has been level funded since fiscal year 23. Now, in this current environment, level funding is a win. But when we look in the larger context, it's also a loss because the populations continue to grow, costs continue to soar, and we are operating with the same amount of money. So just that's all to say that if you see the proposal, that adult education is being cut. No, it's not being cut. It is being threatened right now with elimination. And we have an opportunity to raise our voice. We'll talk more about that in support of support of these appropriations. We'll talk about how you can do that. The last one here is outside the Department of Ed. I saved that one last because this is actually ECA for Educational Cultural Affairs, is part of the Department of State. I know we have many members, many educators that may currently be involved with, or alumni of an ECA program, English Language Fellows, English Language Specialists. Right now, there is a proposal out of the State Department to cut almost 70% out of that fund. And the ECA has many, many programs, not just English language or ELPs. The good part is that the president's proposal did specifically mention 11 million for ELPs. The bad news is that's not even enough to cover the current programs for ELPs there. So that's, it's a It's not a complete cut. Last year we were looking at almost a complete cut. At that time, it was such that ECA in the president's proposal was to be cut from 740 down to 40 million. Now, I believe the cut. Let me see here. I think I got it in my notes. Yeah, the cut now is going from 670 million to 215 or 216 million. So that is a substantial cut, almost 70%. I think about 66, 68% exact there. So it kind of gives you an idea of the importance of your voice with your members of Congress, letting them know of the value of what the English language teaching profession brings, whether you're in pre-K through 12, adult ed, higher ed, whether you're out in, well, you should, if you have a Republican representative, don't say the word soft or say the phrase soft diplomacy, but the support and the efforts of our ELPs out there providing services so that people can learn English and can be able to access some of the many quality programs here in the United States. So anyway, just gives you a quick overview there of the appropriations. That's really the big one, and wanted to hit a few others here to talk about some of the other things that are impacting the field. I've kind of put all these together in one, and we'll go over them. And feel free to. I think we'll go from here into some of the questions before we go into taking action, because there may be some things here that perhaps I've missed that you're following that I haven't been able to broach here. Would love to chat with you on those. The first one, student loans. I talked about that a moment ago. The student loan program. Um, uh, there was a Federal Register notice out I guess it would have been a little over 60 days ago, in which there was some regulatory change to enact the Big Beautiful Bill. You may remember the Big Beautiful Bill that was passed, and one of those was focused upon student loans. And if you are a graduate in graduate school and you are pursuing education, you now are no longer considered professional. Now, the administration is saying that is, that's just for that's not saying that you're not professional. That's just saying the designation. Well, it does have a symbolic effect in that, but it also has a real world effect. So educators in graduate education have a lifetime cap of $100,000 before the others who are the select few that are now considered professional have access to $200,000 lifetime. That is also per year 20,500. So there's limitations in that if you're relying upon federal loans for access. I think looking at the landscape, the bigger impact is going to be on those that are part-time students. In essence, the access to student loans for part-time students is prorated based upon your enrollment. So if you're a part-time student, half-time student, you would only have access to $10,000 a year in student loans, whereas many programs part-time, you're probably well over that 10,000 mark. So it does have an impact. And we're in a time already where access, or excuse me, not access, but we're looking at shortages across all levels, but especially in public education. And we also are looking at where you've got fewer and fewer choices for it. We see at TESOL, you get notices that such and such program is cut back, and maybe this master's in TESOL program is no longer available. So you see that impact across the across the landscape, and then when you reduce or restrict access to the loans that make that possible, it is a worry on top of that. TESOL did supply comments to the Federal Register. If you look at our news cycle, you can go back a couple of months ago. You'll see we have a news item on that. Feel free to read that and talk about the impact there. Another big one has been the support of education and the support of the Department of Education in general is now, like I said before, being farmed out to other agencies. Primarily, when it comes to our area, it's the Department of Labor. We have already seen some hiccups with the career technical and adult education. That was the early move over to labor, and there were some hiccups in that process, and some of the states had difficulty drawing down their money. And that was already at a stage where Ed had been really just decimated through the reduction in force. Matter of fact, the reduction in force for the Department of Ed was such that the Office of English Language Acquisition, I think, went from about 17, 18 individuals that managed that $890 million appropriations and technical assistant, went down to one individual, and that individual then reported to the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Unfortunately, looks like everything is going to go forward. Back in February, very quietly, the Department of Ed notified Congress that it intended to eliminate the Office of English Language Acquisition entirely, saying that the responsibilities could be absorbed by the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We at TESOL have joined with others organizations in submitting a letter to Secretary McMahon. We are in the process right now of getting that letter together, getting sign-ons. She goes before the Ed and Workforce Committee on Thursday, and we want to make sure that that is in her hands ahead of that. If you are a leader of an organization and would like to sign on to that, please message me. I'll get you the link to that. Today I sent out that letter to our affiliate leaders. If you're an affiliate leader, go look at your general email, make sure that you're accessing that if you would like to sign on to that, because it does ask very specific questions about, okay, you're eliminating it, but there's still statutory responsibilities under Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which must be implemented. How are you going to oversee that? How's it going to be done? How are the English learners going to be supported? How the state's going to be supported, etc. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little fast. I'll try to slow down. I'm just being cognizant of time. This next one, educational access, we spoke to that briefly, but I want to highlight a little bit more here. We have at TESOL, well, not just we at TESOL, I think anybody who's paying attention has seen challenges at the state level. Most prominently, the state of Tennessee is enacting, or at least they've passed some legislation. I'm not sure yet if it's signed into law. I'm going to talk to Byron down at ETSU, see what he's keeping tab. No, he's at Carson Newman. Sorry, he's keeping tabs on it for Tennessee TESOL. A lot of efforts went into opposing that, but that legislation would essentially set up potential litigation that would work its way up to challenge Plyler v. Doe. Specifically, that legislation sought to collect information based upon immigration status, producing an indirect barrier to public education. So we're keeping an eye on that. There's also a similar bill in Ohio right now, HB 42. There were similar bills. Sometimes they're not bills. Sometimes there were actions in Oklahoma. That was a proposed change that the Department of Ed tried to put forth and it was quashed. But you see these challenges coming up at the state level with the express intent they want to start litigation that would lead to I would imagine that they are seeking to overturn that. So another Supreme Court ruling to try to overturn the 1982 Supreme Court ruling. But this is also happening at the federal level. The Judiciary Committee of the House had a hearing. It was, I want to say, a month and a half ago. I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was sometime in April. I have to go back and check. In which they brought witnesses forth, and MALDEF, Mexican Alliance for Legal Defense Education Fund. I think I've got that right. That was the association that was behind the original Plyler v. Doe. They were the only ones testifying before the hearing for educational access. The other witnesses were called and talking about it, how much of a drain it was. And really, there were some horrific accusations made in which there was a lot of unsubstantiated claims in terms of impact on educational access, especially for the undocumented. But the biggest concern, especially if you're in the English language teaching profession, is that you have witnessed a promulgation of negative rhetoric in which English learners are automatically equated to undocumented. Matter of fact, it got so bad that they were lumping in refugees and asylum seekers as undocumented. So pretty much some of those in opposition here was, to be frank, it was they don't sound like us, they don't look like us, so they must be illegal. And then this is a case where we are following closely because we want to make sure that this positive narrative is out there. I will, if I am going to be sending out to all those that register to this a link as soon as I get it. We're still in process of trying to set this up, but there's going to be a media a link out there talking about OELA, but it's also talking about bringing into context with the Q&A about educational access. So I'll send those to all registrants, that link, as soon as I get it, hopefully later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. That will be happening on Wednesday. And that is conjunction with our partners. We have a coalition of partners called the National English Learner Roundtable, and that is being spearheaded by Unidos US there. So I'll get that out to you. And lastly, some of the other changes, we'll speak briefly when it comes to international education. And we know we have a lot of language ELT educators focused on serving international student populations. I myself, my background is from that side of the house. I've always, for actually almost all of my career, have worked in helping to support the student mobility across the globe, international access, international education access, not just for English language programs, but for universities. I've helped set up programs overseas. So this is kind of near and dear. And we have seen since really since the mid 2010s a decline in the numbers coming to the United States, and such now that some of the policies behind the scenes, when you have basically really a change in the approval of visas, F1 student visas, that have significantly impacted people's ability to come. One of the biggest senders is India, and they have been, I think, reports of substantial double-digit increases in the visa denials, but also in just visas in general. Once they're here, sometimes students, I think the last report last year was almost 5,000 students had their visa revoked or their status terminated, sometimes unbeknownst to the student or unbeknownst to the school. So there was a lot of advocacy going on in this case by another coalition partner, NAFSA, NAFSA, if some of you may be members of that. But really the big one that everyone is waiting for is a final rule that is imminent on duration of status, changes to that which would add substantial cost and processes and no guaranteed paths for students coming into the United States, and it would have a significant impact. We propose, not propose, we project. That's the word I was looking. Project it would have a significant impact on English language programs. So anyway, I'm gonna stop right there. We're going to talk about taking action in just a minute, but I want to open this up. If there were any questions that people may have, please feel free to come off mute. And I'm going to come back to wrap it up here after the Q&A. With some of the ways that you can take action. So if there's anything out there that anyone would like to talk, anything perhaps that I missed, any area that you're focused on that say, Jeff, you forgot about X, Y, or Z, please feel free to ask any questions that you have. So please feel free to come off mute if you do have questions. And I'll see if I can look over the chat real quick. Let's see. Oh, RIF. Okay, someone asked about RIF. My apologies. RIF is a reduction in force. So you may recall last year, in the spring of last year, there was almost a 50% reduction in force of the Department of Ed. And so you had a lot of career employees that had a wealth of knowledge, technical assistants that walked out the door. Most impacted for us was the elimination of the majority, if almost all but one, of the Office of English Language Acquisition. You may have also seen the Office of Civil Rights. I think 7 of the 12 regional offices were decimated there in that process. So, looks like a lot of people were putting in the answer for reduction in force. Now, okay, it doesn't appear to be any questions, so I'll just move right into the take action. But if there is a question, Christina, the Office of English, is it being eliminated this week? Back in February, I can't remember the exact date. I think it was February 13th. The Secretary McMahon, submitted a notice to Congress, a 90-day notice as requirement, that the intention was to eliminate. That comes up this week. It comes up Matter of fact, I think Thursday when she is testifying before the Ed Workforce Education Workforce Committee of the House. Um, it, Pretty much it looks as if it will be eliminated. Matter of fact, Beatrice Seha has already moved over. I think she's in post-secondary education now. She was the lone person for the Office of English Language Acquisition. Even though the office is being eliminated, the statutory responsibilities remain. And that is the main part of the letter that the Coalition of National English Learner Roundtable has put together to address to the Secretary, hoping to seek some answers. We're also trying to see if we can get some questions specifically into that hearing on Thursday. That's all to say that we have a very um, uh, we have an environment which constrains much when it comes to English learners in public education. You have civil rights uh, cases that are prioritizing other things, DEI, et cetera. They're not prioritizing civil rights of English learners. You have proposed eliminations of funding, and you now have technical assistance that has gone pretty much out the door and being dispersed there. So there are a lot of things that need to be addressed. And quite frankly, I look at this in two things. One, we continue to raise our voice now, but we also look towards the future. Hopefully that will be 2029 and being able to not just rebuild, but build back better. I mean, we never have a perfect system. What are some of the ways that we can build back better when it comes there? So not just OELA. So, okay, let me get back over here and then we'll talk about some taking action. Where did it go? Yeah, I think this is it. Okay. Yes, talk about taking action. Some ways you can take action. I'm going to talk about um, two primary ways. One is you can always raise your voice to your member of Congress. Currently, right now, TESOL has ways in which you can write your member of Congress to support the one on the top is the federal education funding for 27. We also, if you haven't yet sent a thank you, you might want to do this together. Sent a thank you to your member of Congress, even if they voted against it. Send them a thank you anyway. It's always nice to, hey, by the way, I know it might not have been your priority, but it was my priority. Thank you for funding whatever that may be. If you're specific to public education, K through 12, if you're specific to adult, higher ed, ECA, whatever it may be. We have that there. So protect federal education funding in FY27. We will be re-emphasizing this as we get closer. Matter of fact, I think next week we'll be doing I know next week we'll be doing an additional push for support of that because June 9th, the House Appropriations Committee for Education is called Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education. Will be meeting and marking up their bill. As I said before, the president has proposed his bill, most likely the House bill, because it is pretty much aligned with the president as far as the majority goes. Will most likely seek to eliminate that, although you never know. We have seen the House push back on some of the president's proposed cuts, so it's not foolproof. And then when the Senate later on this summer, the Senate will do the same in its appropriations. We'll have another one specific to the Senate. So we'll be doing one next week. This one you see right here is specific to, uh, or not specific, but in general for appropriations. Next week will be a specific one. You will be receiving one if you have a House representative who serves on the Appropriations Committee, because that's where we want to focus our efforts there. A couple of other ones there. I didn't talk about it today, but down at let's see, Protect Sensitive Areas Act or Sensitive Locations Act. That one there really gets to educational access. This has to do with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, in and around education, other public access, such as churches, parks, etc., where there was some protection around that, except for exigent circumstances. You couldn't just go in. What we have seen and witnessed is enhanced activity in and well, not so much in. There has been some activity reported in, but most of it has been around schools, in which you may recall a moment ago talked about the majority of English learners being U.S. citizens, but then you have a majority of those that have, maybe living in mixed status families. And when you have mixed status families, the child may be a U.S. citizen, but there's someone in the family, they may have a undetermined status and may be a little leery. And in some cases, quite frankly, with the way things go, some of the enforcement activity, regardless of status, may be picked up, and then you have to work it out later. So there's a lot of uncertainty around that. That act right there would codify the Sensitive Locations Act. Before, it was just a policy memo. This would codify it, and it is both in the Senate and the House. Unfortunately, it is all Democrats. We would love to have a Republican that would put his or her name on that as a co-sponsor. I continue to press my representative's office. He's one of the more moderate Republicans, but still, you never know what those relationships will bring. So, if at a minimum, even if you don't want to sign up, or if you right now say, Jeff, I don't know about sending a letter, at least sign up for the Action Center, so we send out notices. You'll get notices on that. And on the Action Center, we actually give you the text to send. You can edit it, put in your story, change it around, but we give you the template to make it easy for you. We want to give you the information and a template, so it's just a few clicks and boom, boom, you've sent a letter. So that's one of the ways in which you can take action at the federal level. And then the other way, I'm very excited. For those of you who haven't heard, we will be having, this actually is our 20th anniversary of the Advocacy Action Days. We began this in 2006, not 2006. Yeah, 2006. John Segoda, you may remember him, director of advocacy and public policy with TESOL, began this back in 2006. So we have the 20th anniversary, and this year trying to expand, not trying, but we are expanding access to this. So we're joining with NABE, National Association of Bilingual Education, or for Bilingual Education. They will be joining with us. And do we have, is Margarita, President of NABE, is she on? Margarita, are you on? If you are, say hi. I would love for you to say hi. Anyone else from NABE that might be on? But we're meeting June 22nd to the 24th. If you haven't signed up yet, there's a code there. They'll give you 20% off registration. We had a little bit of late start on getting the promotion. Fully recognize that, so we're getting more information and details together to get out there for you. So we'd love to see you, especially if you are in the DMV area. And for those of you that don't know the DMV, I had to learn this well. I always thought of Department of Motor Vehicles, but that's the District, Maryland, and Virginia. So if you're in and around DC, a quick drive or a commuter train in, we'd love to have you that day. Even if you could only make it for the Hill visits, I would love to help you be there to raise your voice. As always. So, and then other action. Think about other things you can do. Be involved at your state level association, whether you are with a TESOL affiliate, a NABE affiliate. Maybe with NAFSA, you're working with regions. If you're part of English USA, especially in higher ed on English USA, make sure you're involved there. A lot of activity that English USA is doing, especially in impacting the federal level. But be involved either at state, or regional, or national associations. Get the information out. Help communicate that to the people around you. Look for your allies within your campus and communities. Talk about the value of what you do in all of the contexts that you have that will publicly promote that. Now, if you're saying, Jeff, I can't do advocacy, that's all right. You don't have to talk about a policy. You don't have to say, hey, fund this or fund that, but you can tell your story. Tell your story about, hey, I'm an educator, and the access to these federal loans really helped me, and because of that, I've been able to do this. Or tell the stories of your families and your learners, about how they have been supported by what's going on. Hey, because they were part of this program, they've been able to access this, and they are now contributing in so many positive ways to our community. Because they had access to this. So feel free. You don't always have to advocate for appropriations or policy legislation, but tell the story about impact. And I think that's something that any of us and all of us can do there. So yes, I'm good. I'm going to give you, I will leave it there. If you have any questions, I do want to say thank you for being with us. Feel free to email me. You can email me advocacy@tsol.org or direct at jhutchison at tsol.org. So just wanted to say thank you for spending your Monday evening with us. Not the whole evening, just the hour. We will put this recording up, and if anyone has questions or follow up, hope to see many of you in DC. I know some of you on there have already signed up or in the process. Susan Rutledge is there. She is. Yeah, say hi, Susan. She's waving there. She's going to be there. My fellow patriot up here in Pennsylvania. Mary Indris there. I think Mary, you're going to be able to make it. Make it okay. Very good deal. Good deal. We're looking forward to see you. And Deborah, are you going to be able to? You'll be in town for the advocacy days. Perfect. Love to see you there. Love to see you there. And let's see. Yeah, Kalina, what are you holding up there? I can't see that.
Oh,
Okay.
one of students brought me flowers today, for
Oh,
the
students brought you
Mother's
love.
Day and Teachers Appreciation Week last week. So she brought them today. So I'm just getting to the parking lot. Our
Oh,
students are so awesome.
wonderful, wonderful. Well, that is a wonderful reminder, actually, because we are all of you are educators. This has been Teacher Appreciation Week. And I know all of you can point back to that teacher that made that difference in your life going forward. So thank you to all of you for what you do each and every day. If tomorrow all the funds dried up from the federal level, we would still be doing what we're doing in some capacity. Because that's what we are. That's what we are. We're educators. We're passionate about this. It's what we love. So thank you all for what you do. And if you do have a time to be with us in June, we'd love to see you. And if anything, be on the lookout for that call to action next week when we're specifically targeting the House appropriations for education. So thank you to all. Have a wonderful Monday and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will be helping. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all.